What if you're not ready to go the route of having your child completely evaluated to see if there's an issue? Just so you know, there is no obligation to do that. It's just a best practice. It's what we would advise parents to do to get help right away. But it is absolutely your choice. If you want to take the initiative and work with your child on these skills, you may do that as well. I'm going to tell you about the AIR method too. So the AIR method is an interaction and routines. That's the way to remember these. If you see or you notice the air needs to be changed, use these methods to get things going with your child. Sensitivity and attunement. What I mean by that is watch your child. When you know those milestones and that those milestones aren't being met, be sensitive to what is going on. Try different things. Pay special attention to those particular areas where your child might be faltering, because that's going to make you aware of what's going on. It's going to keep it in front of your mind, and you will do things differently, a little differently, to try to get them to meet the expectation. Okay, so what if you're not ready to go the route of having your child completely evaluated to see if there's an issue? Just so you know, there is no obligation to do that. It's just a best practice. It's what we would advise parents to do to get help right away. But it is absolutely your choice. If you want to take the initiative and work with your child on these skills, you may do that as well. And so what if you wanted to work on that? Oh, Charlene, you said your son is going there. I hope that means they're going through Child Find and going to get the help and the services and supports. So if you are not ready to go through Child Find, what can you do? Here's something, even if your child is going through Child Find or getting help in other places, these are still things you can do. So let's talk about some of these strategies. They're so important. All right. I'm always trying to make up a cute little acronym for something because it just helps to remember. But the first thing that we say helps, one of the strategies that you can use when you're thinking my child might have a delay, is the C method or the AIR method. The C method or the AIR method. So the C method: sensitivity, engagement, and establishing routines. That's the C method. So when you're doing that, I'm going to tell you about the AIR method too. So the AIR method is an interaction and routines. That's the way to remember these. If you see or you notice the air needs to be changed, use these methods to get things going with your child. Sensitivity and attunement. What I mean by that is watch your child. When you know those milestones and that those milestones aren't being met, be sensitive to what is going on. Try different things. Pay special attention to those particular areas where your child might be faltering, because that's going to make you aware of what's going on. It's going to keep it in front of your mind, and you will do things differently, a little differently, to try to get them to meet the expectation for that particular milestone. Right? So if you find that your child is giving you cues that they need certain things, or that they're hungry perhaps, or let's say that they're tired a lot of the times, or like I said before, they're bumping into things a lot. Don't just write it off or think, do I need to work with that? Pay special attention to it, okay? So the next one is being engaging or interactive. When you do see something, when your spidey senses have gone off and you recognize something's going on, get engaged. Get involved. Go ahead and start interacting with your child. Put things in front of them. Put them in situations so you can test what you suspect in a way, of course, that is in a safe environment. But you want to make sure that you're giving them opportunities to practice that skill so you can really assess if there's an issue. Because if you decide to go through the Child Find process, what you're going to find is they're going to ask you a lot about the things that you're seeing at home. What are you observing? So if you're paying special attention, you're attuned to what's going on, and you're giving your child situations and being interactive with them and teaching them how, to do certain things and you're seeing whether they're responding to what you're doing or not, that's valuable information that the team will need. They will then cater their tests to test the things that you're suspecting are going on. And Charlene, if that has been your experience, put a yes or something in the chat to let us know. Because usually when you go through that process, a lot of what they do is talk to you and then they do some assessments with your child. Okay. And the last one is establishing routines, or R for routines. Be routine about it. Okay. Make sure that you have consistent routines, because predictability can sometimes help when a child is confused about how they're interacting and engaging with the world. So if you have a routine, if you have consistency in how things are done, it helps them to build skills and it helps them to learn how to do things. So that routine can help to support their development in all the different domains. The cognition, if you have a child who pays attention to the details, they might notice that usually around this time, I get sleepy, or you might notice that about your child because you have a regular bedtime routine. Usually at a certain time of day, they're ready to get up because you have a regular wake up routine. They're usually hungry at a certain time because usually you eat around that time. Those consistent routines will help them in their developmental processes and help move them along on the milestones, okay, along that milestone roadmap. Another thing that you can do is play-based learning. As when I was a preschool teacher, it was one of my favorite times of day. In fact, it was like a big block of the day. We had centers that the children could rotate around to, and we would engage them in those different centers. There are sensory centers. There's a sensory center for touch. So they might be working with sand one day. So if your child is out at the park and they're out there getting involved, get them involved in sensory play with the sand that's in the park. If you're out in your garden or your backyard, let them touch and feel what's going on out there. Ask them questions about it. When ELCHC had their day of play not too long ago, back in February, one of the things that we did was have the children go on a scavenger hunt. We just picked out some things that you typically would find outside, made a list of those things, and as we went through the different stations, the children could see if they could find those things. It was just fun for them. So parents tell them, hey, make sure you see a pine cone in here. Where's the pine cone? They would go find the pine cone. Another station that we did was the wet bar. So the wet bar was a place where they could go and they could test whether items float or whether they sink. To them, it's just play. But if you're playing and you as a parent are asking questions like, hey, did it float or did it sink? All they know is they get to play in water and make a mess and test out some different things. But at the same time, guess what? They're thinking, their critical skills are building. They're using their hands to touch. So you're getting to get them to use their motor skills. You're helping them to make decisions about things. They're observing what's happening and making that connection to what's happening. They're learning what floating is, what sinking is. And that was an activity for our really young preschools. I think some of the children it was like 3 and below, right? But I did have a few older children who tried to sneak in there. We gave prizes for everything. So their thing was like, I just want the prize. So they got involved with the wet bar, and they got involved with the scavenger hunt too, just so they could get their prize. But that play-based learning, especially for children who are developing through those milestones, is a great way to sharpen their cognitive skills, to build social, emotional, to build their confidence in their ability to know and understand the world that they live in. So play-based learning is another way that you can get involved. Even if you do board games, as children get older, sometimes they might like board games. Now they say, Dr. Rolanda, who in the world owns it? We love board games, card games like Uno, chess, checkers. Those are all strategy games. So those are ways that you can help them to develop in their cognitive skills. Okay. All right. And then the last thing you want to do is create an environment that is enriched with learning opportunities. And I talked about this a little bit before when we were talking about learning language, but you can do this with anything. As you're riding down the street, you can play games like I Spy. You can have your child tell you the colors of the light. They can point out all the red cars, or they can count. And all these things are helping them to sharpen up in their developmental skills, their cognitive skills. So they're using their senses to understand the world around them and in that environment. And the good thing about creating these enriched environments is your children feel safe to explore. One of the things that holds children back a lot of times from learning more, from building those cognitive thinking skills, is they don't feel safe enough to do it. But if you're creating an environment where it is okay to ask questions, where it's okay to explore, where you know that they're safe, so they know that they're safe. I have a nephew who can pull anything apart. He's only 2 years old, but he will take something apart in a heartbeat. He loves to see how things work, how they tinker. He's just putting things together all the time and taking them apart, but mostly taking them apart. But it's important for children to do that because he has things that he can take apart. He can stack his stackables and unstack them and fit this one there. And I have a niece who's into Taekwondo, so she's getting the brain and body connections. If you're creating an environment that is rich, they are going to explore along their developmental milestones, and you'll see them working in all those areas, in language, in their social and emotional development, their behavioral development, learning how to behave with their peers, learning how to share, learning how to communicate, and learning how to strengthen up those physical. They're learning to ride bikes, they're learning to ride trikes, they're learning to skateboard or school, whatever you're having them do, walking up the stairs, jumping down, going up the slide, sliding down. All those things are ways to sharpen them up in the developmental area. Okay, I could go on and on, but I think you get the idea. There's just so much for the children to get involved in when you're working through their developmental milestones. And just like I said before, if you get intervention and support, you can decrease the need for special education services by 50%. Play-based learning can also increase a child's problem-solving skills by up to 50%. So it's definitely worth giving it a try and getting it a try early on. If your gut is telling you there's something going on, reach out for help. You can go, like I said, you can go to your child's doctor, because your child's doctor should be monitoring those milestones too. You'll see them when you take them to the doctor, they're measuring their height, they're measuring their weight. They may be giving them a good look over. They may ask you a couple of questions. That is so that they can assess if your child is developing normally, like they're supposed to, according to these milestones. If you're thinking not, and you say, my doctor says this, you can go to the school. You go to the school in your neighborhood. You can say, I have a child, not school aged yet, but I suspect that there may be some issues. They'll say, okay, tell us what's going on. You tell them what you're noticing. And then you say, I want to have my child assessed to see if they need some special education or support or some other services. When children are young, before they're school aged, they can be helped through with a special education program. They put my daughter on a family service plan, an individualized family service plan, an IFSP. And that was a plan for the family. That's why they taught me strategies, and that's why they worked with her. And we had goals and objectives that we had to meet. And so you can have that for your child as well if you go through that process. So you can seek professional help. And Child Find says, and a lot of people don't know this, that you can start receiving services for your child at birth, right? They can be a second old. And when your doctor does that test for the babies to see if they respond to different types of stimuli, even then, if your child is not meeting the milestones at that point, because remember, when we looked at the CAC chart, they had 0 to 2 months. There are things your child should be doing even after they just come into the world. If you're noticing any delays at any point, go ahead and reach out to have your child assessed to see if you can get some support and help. Because why? You already know why. You already know. The sooner you get help, the shorter that gap of services, the sooner that they can start hitting those milestones. Okay? All right. So it's all about trust. It's all about access, collaborate, and advocate. Okay? Trust your gut. Trust the people you've gone to for help. Access the services that are available to you. Collaborate, talk about what you're seeing, talk about what they're seeing, try strategies at home that they're trying at school and vice versa. And then advocate when you see that these things aren't working, or if you see that they are, speak up, let your voice be heard on behalf of your child. I hope you found the presentation helpful. I hope that it was speaking to you. And what I would like for you to do is to share your feedback with us. Let us know some of the other things you would like to hear about. And I wish you all the best. And until next time, what are the milestones? Why are they important? How do you identify those milestones? We're going to talk about red flags, because even though most of your children are 12 months and over, there still can be red flags that you want to be mindful of and you want to intervene on. And then we're going to talk about some strategies, the importance of the developmental milestones. First of all, I want you to think of developmental milestones as a roadmap to the things that your child should be doing at each stage. I'm going to get into detail about those developmental stages as we move through the presentation. I'm going to let you see what your child should be doing at those stages, even beyond 12 months. But it's important to know so that you know when your child is not hitting a milestone. And why is that important? Why do you need to know when you're not hitting a milestone? Because the longer you wait and you see signs of a developmental delay, the harder it's going to be for your child to catch up. I don't know if you've ever heard the term or you heard about the law way back, I think it was in the 80s, early 90s, when they were saying we need to close the gap. We need no child left behind, close the education gap. A lot of that had to do with so many children not receiving educational supports and services to be successful. And so the gap between what children knew and what they were supposed to know kept getting wider and wider. Well, you can close the gap. The earlier you get that intervention, the sooner you can close that gap. So it's important because it's timed. The longer you wait, the bigger the problem. The sooner you get the help, the more targeted help, because if you know the milestones, you know exactly where your child's not meeting, and then you know what to work on.